بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, to the first workshop for this academic year as a part of the Forum of Heads and Supervisors of the Academic Departments at King Abdulaziz University. We are discussing today the role of departments in developing professional teaching standards and framework. It's my pleasure to be a moderator for this workshop. I am Aman Al-Tuwergi, and on behalf of the Scientific Committee, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you. The duration of this workshop is around 2 hours, and it consists of presentations and some activities, and at the end, we will open the floor for discussions and question and answer. We will provide attendance certificates to all attendees. Our guest speaker for tonight is known for her work in medical education, health professions, faculty development, educational and clinical leadership and management. For the last 30 years, she has worked continuously at senior management level in UK and overseas to improve healthcare, health professions, educations. She has worked on over 60 international health workforce, policy development, and education reforms projects in Central Asia, Portugal, Greece, Bosnia, Australia, China, and the Pacific. She's an active member of the International Medical Education Association. She's a professor of medical education at Swansea University at United Kingdom, a visiting professor and consultant for academic affairs at King Abdulaziz University. Let's welcome together Professor Judy McKim. We are pleased, Professor, to have you with us tonight, and the mic is yours.
Thank you very much. Salam alaikum, everybody, and so pleased to be here at last with our standards framework to share with you. I will share my screen. The way that this is going to run is that myself and Mohammed Hussein, and that's it, there we go, we'll talk about the framework and introduce it to you. And we've got some activities that we're going to do to build in a bit of interactivity. There are quite a lot of you here, 112 so far. So we can't do breakout rooms and things, but hopefully this will give you a really good indication of what we're doing. So that is me, as we said, and I've been working with the team at KAU for about 2 years now, and very much enjoy doing that. So the aims of this evening are really to talk to you and inform the faculty about the ideas that we've had for the King Abdulaziz Professional Standard Framework. We have, as I said, we've been working on this for about 2 years. And I'll explain how we did it and what our outcome is, and then share with you some of our ideas and get your input and feedback. That would be really useful. We're going to contextualize this within the work of departments, thinking about how you might use this to support your staff in performing better in all aspects of their academic life. Think about some of the benefits, and then we'd welcome some input from you on what you see are the benefits and some of the challenges as we roll this out across the university. So the first activity, I'm going to hand over to Mohammed. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, thank you, Prof. Judy. Welcome, Prof. Judy, and welcome everyone. And let us go to our first activity as been displayed by Dr. Judy in her screen, but let me share my screen to share the result of this activity with you. Actually, the first activity is just introductory activity. I think, yani, mashallah, everyone here is familiar with Menti and know how to use it in activity. So please go to menti.com and use the code 14501386. We can write this code on the chat, or you can capture the barcode and go to directly to the question. So the code here 14501386 and go to Menti. This is just introduction. And the code already, Prof. Judy, thank you, Prof. Judy, is on the chat. The first question is about gender. We have how many male and how many female, and I'm sure that female will win, inshallah, as usual. Oh, mashallah. By the way, we are 138, so we need, because this is just introduction, but we have more and more activity, and we need your discussion and feedback and your input, which will be very important in the launch of this framework, as mentioned by Prof. Judy. But yeah, we need at least 50% of you, at least. As expected, Prof. Judy.
What, the women are winning.
Yes.
Exactly.
But we can add one more in the name for me.
Okay, go on then.
Okay, let us go to the second question, which is...
Could you just put the Menti in the chat again, because somebody's just joined.
The code is here also on the screen, 14501386. Here, you see it, Prof. Judy?
Yes.
On the screen, okay.
Yes.
Good. Okay, so let's, because we now 143. Okay, so we can go to the next question, which is about your academic rank. Okay, mashallah. As usual.
These are the warm-up questions, aren't they, Mohammed? Yes, these are the warm-up. And what we want to do is we've got some questions that we really would like your answers to. So if you can get the Menti up, that would be really good. So we can get going, that'd be fab.
Okay, good. Your job? Okay. And after this, we will start the question which is closely related to the framework, inshallah. Okay. And how do you describe yourself mainly as educator, researcher, or leader? Okay. Okay.
Lots of leaders.
Yes, yes, because we are today with the head, mainly with the head and supervisor of department. But mashallah, we have also another categories. Okay, sorry. Did you receive any training in one or more of the following? Education, research, leadership, specialty training? Okay, here you give here in this question a score or mark 1 out of 100. So the total by the end will be here 100. So here we put this to make you able to put more than one option, but the weight is different. Okay. I think this is okay, Prof. Judy, and
Yes.
return the mic to you. Thank you. If you have any comment about this just introductory activity, you are most welcome.
Have they all finished voting in all the sections then, Mohammed?
Yes, sure. I now stop share and let the share for you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So as you can see, we've got a mixed group of people here, quite evenly balanced. Yeah, So I think we've got a mixture of educators, researchers, leaders. We've got a balance of genders, and let's get going. So we've got all these things. Now, where did this begin? Over the world, internationally, the academics, university academics, have become more and more professionalized. In other words, in the olden days, they were never seen really as a profession as such. But along with being trained in teaching and research and leadership, we've seen that our roles and responsibilities of academics has developed. We do more than we used to, and it has become increasingly professionalized. However, this is not widely recognised. We can achieve formal roles like assistant professor, etc., and we get recognised in that way. But there isn't a profession of university teachers per se. Having said that, when we go through accreditation process or quality assurance, accreditors always ask about the faculty. Have they been trained, developed? Where do they get their skills? How did you recognise the staff? So around the world, really started in the West. The UK was one of the leaders in this, but also Australia and New Zealand. These professional standards have been developed for university academics. And over the last 2 years, we've been thinking, actually, it would be really timely to recognise this and for people to be able to work towards something that recognises and values their contribution. So any recognition scheme needs to include a range of things. And we need an evaluation process that's trusted. Everybody has to have equity. It needs to be clear and transparent. We need to provide training and development pathways so that people can move up the standards and achieve more. We need to provide support and mentoring for faculty. The standards have to be clearly defined so that they're simple and easy to understand. And there needs some sort of a code of practice which has values in it so that we can think about what we expect from the broad sense of our academics in our universities. So about 2 years ago, we carried out a comprehensive analysis of international professional standards and frameworks. And we looked at, my colleague and I, we looked right across different parts of education. We looked at university and tertiary, higher education. We looked at further and vocational and technical education. We looked at schools. Then we looked at medical and health professions, education and leadership, because there are standards there. And then we looked across industry, how our managers and leaders developed and recognised and rewarded. So a very comprehensive analysis. And the framework for KAU comes from this international evaluation that we did. So in terms of professional standards, we identified the key features of all standards, and then we brought them into the design of our own standards. So very typically, there are a set of criteria that people have to meet, and they're grouped into domains or dimensions. Very typically, professional knowledge, behaviours and skills, experience, contribution to the profession and the wider community, and values. And they all have those sort of features in greater or lesser extents. The values are either depicted as central or underpinning or overarching. So the way that values, professional values, are presented varies across the different professional standard frameworks. It's recognised that engagement should be voluntary and not compulsory. But what it should do is attract people to apply for the recognition so that they get something from it, be that recognition of promotion, a certificate, a name, or whatever. So I am a senior fellow of the UK's Higher Education Academy, now called Advanced HE. I'm an honorary fellow of the Faculty of Medical Leadership and Management in the UK, and I'm a founding fellow of the Academy of Medical Educators, because I was one of the first ones. So I've got these fellowships of different organisations in the UK that recognise my experience and my skills and knowledge. So what we look at the criteria then, they'll be subdivided into research, learning and teaching, leadership, other things like that. So they vary a lot across the standards frameworks. They're not all the same. So we've taken what we think fits with KAU. So the second set of features are that the criteria are set out into levels, which reflect people's experience, their skills and abilities, although they do vary around the world. So in Australia, the levels map onto academic levels of activity. So lecturer, associate professor, professor, or senior leader. So theirs will go like that. In the UK professional standards framework, it isn't about the level of employment or position, but it's about providing evidence that you meet the criteria at the levels. And they're looked at without really knowing what the status of the person is. Most frameworks differentiate between routine work, teaching, research, etc., and then leadership and management. And we've included that in ours as well. So the final set of features that the international evaluation provided for is they usually require some sort of reflective self-assessment by the person against these criteria. So people provide evidence and reflection about how they meet that, supported by a reference or endorsement from a peer or a senior. So typically people will use their line manager or their boss who's familiar with them to endorse that what they say is true. The applications are reviewed by a panel of expert peers against these criteria. And for us in medical and health professions education, it's always medical educators who review that. For the Faculty of Medical Leadership and Management, it's a panel of senior medical leaders and managers. So it does vary, the applications, and that's something we might want to think about, whether in departments it's better that a small panel of people, for example, that know about engineering education and research, or is, you know, they might be different from the humanities or something like that. So that's something for us to think about. Once successful, though, the applicant is formally recognised by an award or a title, and they typically are things like member, fellow. So in the UK, we have member, associate fellow, fellow, senior fellow, principal fellow. So you can go all the way up there. So there's a way of sort of growing and developing up the standards frameworks. And that's, I think, is quite nice because it motivates people to actually move up the ranks, as it were, and get those more prestigious fellowships. So what we've done is we've thought about the needs of the university and the kingdom itself. We've thought about, let's make these standards really fit for purpose, really looking forward into the future for us, to take us forward for the next 10, 20 years, whatever. And we've defined 4 standards. So the first standard is about professional knowledge and skills relating to your subject discipline. So if you're an engineer, or you are a nurse educator, or you are a sociologist, whatever that is, how do you show? You need to show that you've got the professional knowledge and skills. And at basic level, that might be as straightforward as your degree or your PhD or whatever. So in a way, that's quite straightforward to look at. The second standard is all about education, learning and teaching. This is not your subject discipline knowledge. This is about, do you know about the theory of education, about learning and teaching models, about learning theories? Can you practice in those ways? Do you know how to do e-learning or whatever? So that's the sort of teaching and learning standard. That's something that you would provide evidence in a different way from. The third standard is leadership and community engagement. And we've added community engagement into there because not everybody is in a formal leadership position, although they might lead an assessment or a module or whatever. So they might have leadership of something, but also that community engagement. We think that's really important, that people are engaged with the stakeholders that their students are going to work for and other parts of the community. And the fourth standard is about your professional values, your attributes and your capabilities. What is it you bring to the party in terms of the way that you approach your academic life and how you portray that in the way you behave and the way that the things that you do. Okay. So they're the four standards. As we've said, when we looked across the countries, we saw then that they have these different levels. And so we've looked at these levels of recognition. So the standards and the domains will apply to all academics, but the criteria are different for 3 levels of recognition. And this is because people have varying levels of experience. They might be new in post, a new lecturer, a new teaching assistant, a demonstrator, or they might be a very senior leader, or they might be a mid-career academic. The other thing that varies is access to development opportunities. You know, you might not, as a new lecturer, you might not have just had the access to training in teaching or whatever that you might need, or your research skills. So you might not have that. So the 3 professional recognition that we're suggesting are fellow, senior fellow, principal fellow. And although that's a bit of a gendered term, it does reflect how the other professional standards frameworks frame this. We can think about nomenclature as well if we want to. So the standards also reflect our main roles and responsibilities of all academics. And these are the roles that we have. We are expected to engage in research or scholarship or scholarly practice, and we are a specialist in our subject, whatever that subject is. We're expected to educate our students and support them, whatever level that is, at undergraduate or PhD or students in practice, whatever that is, we're educators. We do have a role in the community to provide some sort of leadership there, because we reflect our status in society and our status in the university. And then we have to behave professionally and by our values and our behaviours. So we have to lead as a role model, don't we? So all these things were brought together into a set of standards, which I'm going to describe those to you now, and then we'll have some time for some sort of questions and a bit more interactivity. If you have questions, if you want to put them in the chat or Q&A, feel free, and we'll pick those up in a little while. So there are 4 professional standards. The first standard is professional knowledge and skills relating to the subject discipline as I described. This reflects your role as a researcher and a subject specialist. You know, my background is social sciences, so when I first started teaching, I taught social psychology, sociology, health studies, those sort of things. That was my subject discipline. Now I'm different. I teach faculty development and leadership, so my subject specialist is different and my research is in those domains. The second standard is about you being an educator. So this is you knowing how to teach, how to facilitate learning and assessment. So this is your role as an educator. The third standard is you as a leader in the community. So it's leadership and community engagement. And the fourth is your role as a professional, and these are the professional values, attributes and capabilities. So you can see by looking at those 4 standards, that's what we call the rounded academic, the person who, you know, who actually has that rounded practice. They're not just focused on one area there. And we think that's important because academics do need to have these 4 pillars in their roles, really. Oh, that's slipped a bit, sorry. The standards are divided into these domains then. So we've got the 4 standards here that we've just described. Then each one is divided into these domains, and the way that we look at the criteria are sitting under the domains. So for the first standard, I'll go through these now and then I'll go through them in detail in a minute. For the first standard, it's your knowledge, your subject-based specialist knowledge and your specialist skills. So if you are, I don't know why I've got to think about engineers. If you're an engineer, you will have skills that are very different from a laboratory-based scientist or somebody who teaches in the humanities or linguistics or whatever. Okay, so your skills will be different and your knowledge will be different. The second one, we've divided this into 5 areas, 5 domains. The first is your pedagogical knowledge, your understanding of the learning process and education, and your scholarly practice. Do you understand the evidence that lies behind what you do? So that's the knowledge part about education. And then we have the 4 domains which underpin all educational activities: designing and planning learning, curriculum design, module design, facilitating learning and teaching, that's the bit we all do the most probably, assessment and feedback, and then the end of the quality loop, evaluation and quality assurance. So we close the circle. So they're the 5 domains there. In leadership, we might look at your leadership around research and education, so your leadership inside the university. And then the second domain is your contribution outwards to the wider community. How do your students work with employers? You might work very closely with industry, for example, to encourage your students to gain vocational skills and prepare them for employment. That would be one example of that. The fourth standard then is about your values, your attributes and capabilities. So the first domain here is about your behaviours. How do you demonstrate your values in practice in research and education? You know, your research ethics, how do you make sure things are right? When you write and publish, how do you make sure those ethical things are considered? Or in education as well. Then we have the professional capabilities. This is you self-reflecting, showing self-insight and engaging in self-development. So that might be, I don't know, it might be learning some new software to analyze your data, or it might be going on a workshop around teaching and learning, whatever that is, showing that you're keeping up to date with your subject discipline and with educational practice. So that's very much what we need to do. We can't just stop still, can we? You need to keep developing. So they're the domains and the standards. Then under each of the domains, we've put criteria, and these criteria will be what individuals will be assessed against and have to provide evidence, either through reflection and self-assessment or through providing evidence. And I'll talk about that as we go through. So, standard 1, professional knowledge. So under the first domain, this is what we expect of academics. This is what we expect people to be able to provide. Your knowledge of your subject area that is deep, relevant and up to date. So do you know what you're doing? How do you do that? Understanding demonstrates your knowledge in a range of relevant areas through professional activities, going to conferences, presenting at conferences, writing, publishing, all those sorts of things. How do you show that you are up to date and still have an expertise in your subject-based knowledge or your discipline, whatever that is? So the skills, this is really about thinking about how do you apply your own and others' research to practice. So how do we actually make sure that we apply research to our own practice, so we have evidence-based knowledge? Again, it's about keeping up to date, isn't it? Using this evidence to support the development of yourself and of your students in research and professional activities. So that might be working with a small group of graduate students on a project, or it might be publishing a paper or an abstract at a conference or whatever. How do you do that? How do you make sure, how do you refresh your learning and teaching each year to show that, to reflect changes in knowledge and advances in what we understand? Because that's really all about, very much about keeping up to date and knowing your subject. So the second standard is the biggest one, really, because it's got the most domains. So here, I'm not going to read everyone out here, but here you can see that we have to have knowledge of theory, principles, concepts, and the literature, and that will be relating probably to your own subject. So it might be education in science teaching, or it might be the broader educational literature there. Demonstrating scholarly practice. So not all of us engage in research in education. A lot of people don't, but actually you need to apply educational research to your learning and teaching. Being critical of that. A really good example is thinking about the lessons that we've learned through the pandemic and how we're applying the research and the findings of other people's work to what we do in terms of webinars, blended learning, hybrid learning. So that's a really good example there that you could actually use. And then make a consistent, continuing high-level contribution to scholarship in professional education over at least 5 years. So this is thinking about actually, how do I do that? Do I offer workshops? Do I teach my students? What do I do to contribute to this scholarly practice? And of course, we'd expect a lot more from a senior person than we would from a new lecturer. Okay, so again, this would be quite hard for that, and we wouldn't expect it for the new lecturer. So the criteria vary according to the level. So designing and planning learning, planning effective learning, how do you engage with stakeholders and learners? How do you involve them? And then how do you work creatively within your resources? How do you use new innovations and technologies, for example, to plan your learning and teaching? The second set in Standard 2 is the domain here around facilitating learning. So it's how do you use the range of learning and teaching methods? How do you use digital technologies? Promote the benefits of technology. This isn't just webinars or Zoom. This is the technologies that actually underpin your discipline. So if you're a scientist, it's about using advancing technology. If you're a lab scientist, how do you use those new, how do you train your students to use those new technologies that are emerging? A safe and effective learning environment. This is really important. That's that safe psychological space in learning. How do you promote positive learner behaviour? What do you do to do that? Guide learners in their personal and professional development. Work creatively and collegially, because there are barriers to learning. We don't always have all the resources that we want, so we need to work with others. And then preparing learners for employability, because we're preparing learners for the world of work. Even if the work's in our own universities, they're still working. So we prepare learners for that. So these are all things we should be doing, and we don't always unpick them in this way and write them down, but we have for the standards. So the last two is around assessment and feedback. So it's understanding assessment methods, understanding how assessment drives learning, understanding what the university requires of us as educators, and what do external bodies require from us, particularly for the professional programs that we run. Providing good feedback, designing evaluation of assessment, whatever level that would be, and then evaluates and contributes to design and planning. So a very typical piece of evidence under this one, 2.5, would be the fact that you've sought feedback from your students and you've got some evidence, or you've got the evaluation forms at the end. So we can talk about evidence towards the end. So our third standard is leadership and community engagement. This is really thinking about management and leadership. Now, this might be in your own institution, it might be quite low-level leadership, mightn't it, or management, about, as I say, managing a small course or a module or an assessment or admissions. But it might be, as you progress up the recognition criteria, this might be nationally or even internationally. Okay? So you're leading and contributing to the learning of all colleagues. And again, we'd expect a lot more from a senior leader than we would from somebody who's new or even mid-career. They might not have that opportunity. But you'll see that one of the things that the standards does is it sets out expectations of us as academics. And it makes you think about, actually, this is something that I should be doing. How can I do it? And this is why we want to introduce it university-wide, so we can start to think about how do we provide support and mentorship so that people can achieve these and become these rounded academics. So the wider community then, thinking about how you contribute and engage, how you understand the wider context and also current debates in policy, education and practice. Again, the COVID pandemic has really caused huge policy debates around, you know, the role of online learning, online assessments, plagiarism, cheating, all these sorts of things. What are we doing? What are we doing about that? And what is the context that we're preparing our students for? You also might contribute to different fields of practice that enhance teaching or research. Again, we'd expect more from a much more senior person than we would from somebody new. So the final one is our professional values. This is the hardest one to demonstrate, and it's the hardest one to write, and it's got the most criteria for some reason. But it's all the things that we might expect from an academic. So promoting high quality research and or education. How do we do that? Contributing to organisational and quality improvement. We expect collaboration, not competition. Works to a high standard. Positive collegial collaborative approach. Works to create, contribute to and leads this culture of collegiality. Engaging in inquiry, in feedback, professional dialogue and debate. Something like this is an example of people debating and engaging in dialogue, isn't it? Demonstrates a professional identity as an academic or as a sociologist or as a psychologist or a whatever ist you are, showing that sort of educational philosophy and integrity. Academic integrity is really important, and it's come to the fore a lot with online assessments and how do we ensure that our students demonstrate academic integrity, but it's equally as important for us. Commitment to supporting learners and colleagues, for example, through mentoring or personal tutor, pastoral care, scholarly and reflective practice, thinking about inequalities and cultural and individual values, social justice, creativity and innovation. So really trying thinking about how people learn to do their research. How do we do that? What can we do to engage? So the final part of this then is about you and your capability and your self-development. And you'll see it sort of loops its way back to the beginning, maintains up-to-date and current knowledge. So that links back to standard 1. Going career-long professional learning, how do you show your commitment to that? So that would be you saying, you know, over the last X years that you'd actually engaged with this. Understanding your role and responsibilities, supports people with a willingness and enthusiasm, not like, oh no, not grudging. Some resilience and perseverance when things are tough, you know, how do you overcome those? So the professional values will very much be about your self-reflection and how you do that. And that's usually the way that we look at the values. Time management, communication, applying feedback through that you've got through evaluation, for example. How do you do that? How do you take that on board and make changes? And then really thinking about some self-reflection and inquiry. So these are very much going to be evidenced by yourself in your reflection, a written reflection, and then endorsed by your boss, your line manager or colleagues. So that they're basically saying, yes, this is a person like this. And of course, this is very aspirational, isn't it? If we did this every day, we'd be like wonder people. So if over time you're committed to being this sort of academic. So I'm going to stop there for a minute and ask about questions. And I might hand, I don't know who's moderating this bit, whether it's Amani or whether it's Mohammed. So I will.
Yes, Professor. If you have any questions, please, from the audience, that you can chat it. You can write it in the chat area, please, and
okay.
we will.
So there's one in the Q&A already. So if I make a stab at it, and then somebody else might come in. So at the moment, so the question is, are these criteria used? Will they be used for faculty evaluation appraisal? Or the leaders such as head of department and vice dean. I think the idea, and we'll come on to the rollout when we've talked about this part, but I think initially it will be about recognising people because this is a very developmental process. Eventually, for example, if you have been recognised as a principal fellow or senior fellow, of course you could take that to your appraisal, because that's a really good piece of evidence that you've engaged in all these things, and so it will be perfect for your appraisal. What I think we have to be careful of is how these fit into any promotion, or that sort of thing, because not everybody will be able to engage with it, and also people might not wish to engage, and it would be voluntary at first, but hopefully as the ball gets rolling, then we'll see that. When I worked for the Higher Education Academy in the UK, which is now called Advanced HE, and I actually developed the professional recognition standards framework for the HEA, and then later I did it for the Academy of Medical Educators, and then I've helped with the FMLN standards as well. And early stages, you're just trying to lure people in and attract them. But as the ball gets rolling, it becomes something that's very desired. So over the last 20 years, everybody into higher education in the UK is expected to become a fellow of the Higher Education Academy, which is a national body. Now, we're not saying that's going to be the thing. That's such a good aspiration, because what you're realizing is you're getting people in terms of their own self-development moving on, moving forward there. So,
right. Prof. Judy, we have a questions from the audience.
Yes.
For the performance evaluation from students, what are the suggestions?
I would think we'll come on to talking about the criteria and what evidence you might provide. But I think if you will have your normal end of module, end of course evaluations, so you can use those, the normal ones that you have, but also you can get quick feedback from students at the end of sessions, what went well, or what learning might you take away, and you collect these things up using Menti or Poll Everywhere or the Zoom poll. They're really good ideas to gather feedback from your students. What went well? What would you like me to change? We sometimes do stop, start, continue. But I like to know from students actually what they've learned from my session, and thinking about, well, what do you take away? What else would you have liked? And that feedback, then if you gather that and then you change your next session so you incorporate it, that's perfect for showing how you've learned from reflection and feedback, isn't it? So that's an example for that one. Okay.
All right, we have another questions. This was the standards criteria. What about the required competencies of university staff?
I'm not quite, the criteria are the expected sort of behaviours and skills and knowledge that you would compare yourself. We haven't written them in terms of competencies. But you could so that's, I think that is the difference, that these are a set of standards and criteria that people aspire to, and that they provide evidence that they meet the criteria, but the competencies that underpin that could be very different. So I'm not dodging the question, it's not a competency-based framework, it's a criterion-based framework, and that's the difference. So if we set competencies out, we would make sure that people met the competence. Can you prepare a teaching session? Tick. Can you plan a course module to meet learning outcomes? Can you write learning outcomes? They might be this, and we're not going down to that level. We're going, you might say, in terms of perhaps the domain of planning and designing teaching, your example might be something that you've designed, or something that you inherited and you redesigned it, or it might be a whole program that you've planned. So the competencies might be different, but you're showing your engagement in planning and designing of teaching. Okay, so it's a different sort of framework, if that helps.
All right. Another question, how this framework would have an impact on students or learners?
I think everybody improves their performance. And the other thing is, I think, for the university, demonstrating that, that this professionalization of academics, and we started with academics, some of these would be appropriate to other staff like technicians or library staff, support staff, but we're starting with academics, hence the research one. It will have an impact in two ways, I think. It will enhance the university's sort of reputation in a way about thinking about attracting learners, because you've got this professionalization of the faculty. But also I think it will have a direct impact, because people were just thinking more about their practice. You know, this causes you to reflect on your practice and think about what you should be doing and what you could be doing. And if people need learning or training, then hopefully, you know, that will happen. And then I think so it'll indirectly impact on students' learners. It won't directly impact on them. I've just seen a link question actually on the Q&A. End of semester evaluation from students to instruction depends on their marks. Yes, how to get over this? I think they have to be taken in context. And I think what you perhaps have to do is do your own evaluations that are before the marks, so that you're getting a more honest sort of feedback on your course and your performance. But yes, I mean, I suppose that the marks that people get as well are another performance indicator. You know, if your students do well, then that's an indicator that your teaching is aligned and is working. So yes, I absolutely take your point, depending on when those evaluations are done. But then if you use those as evidence, you put them into context. And also there might be something that you could learn from it as well, because that's quite interesting in itself, isn't it? So it requires people to be quite reflective. And I think also, I think people have to trust the people who are responsible for looking at these applications and assessments, so that they do put things in context. And that's why I was suggesting maybe that's where the role of the departments might come in, I think, because if you think about understanding why that evaluation was like it is, or why the marks were typically what seemed lower or higher, it can very much depend on the subject discipline. Like, it's much easier to get high marks in something that's quantitative, like mathematics or physics, because the answer is the answer. Whereas in more sort of conceptual things like ethics or the humanities, or the behavioural and social sciences, it's harder to get higher marks, you know, and you might not expect that. So I think contextualising the application is really important, because we understand from our own subject discipline what some of the issues and the constraints and the things that we would expect. So I think that's really important, because that does help people get good feedback and improve, I think. Okay, over to you. Where are we now?
There is a question regarding the 4 standards. They said, is it possible to utilize or use the 4 standards? Do you recommend that, or focusing only on one standard, then go to the next one?
I think when we come to look at the rollout and the way that the application processes usually work, usually you have to, when you put your application in, you have to demonstrate that you meet all the standards, so all 4. They're equally as important as one another, but you might have a heavier weighting at some time on one. So for example, if you are a new academic, you might not be able to do much about community engagement or leadership, but actually you might have just been a postdoc, and you might have actually done lots of teaching or supporting learning. And you might be engaged in research, but perhaps you might not have published or got so far. So you can see how the weighting will change depending on the level. And in the underpinning documentation, we've got that. We've got all that. I just didn't put it on the slides, otherwise everybody would have died of slide fatigue. But we've thought about how the criteria would apply at the different levels. So the answer to Umar's question is all 4 standards, but depending on where you work, what you do, what your job is in your stage of career, there might be more or less emphasis on one or the other. Okay, so that's about the application. Okay, what else have we got? So we've got how to, so Salvato, I've got So how to document these daily feedback. I wouldn't think daily necessarily, but actually using these little poll everywhere things is actually quite good because they provide a record for you. So that's quite useful. Or you could get people to, if you're in the classroom, get people to write on a flip chart or a whiteboard, take a photograph, you know, so you can do them quite quick and easy feedback you can get. And then
is there any suggestion for improving the student performance in clinical practice?
Yes, but perhaps not for this webinar. I think that's a trade. I think that's a workshop on its own. I think that's right.
Okay,
yes.
We'll save it for later.
We'll save it,
yes.
I think. Yes.
Okay.
So we've got another couple in the question and answers, haven't we, about academic coaching. I think that's really good. I mentioned mentoring, but actually that support for academics is so important. And I think that comes on to the, you know, the way the university, that's why we're here. Yeah, that development and that support for people as they're working to develop their careers is really important. So we need to think about how will this support be provided for people if it isn't already. So that would be that one. And then the final one, I think, from Shadia is these domains are similar to the programme learning outcomes as defined by NCAA, etc. What are the rationale for having similar domains? These are at individual academic level, not at programme level. So they are similar because these are the things that we're expecting of our students as well as ourselves. And so, yes, they are similar. And if you look around at accreditation and professional development, all these sort of things, there always are similar things there, graduate outcomes, etc., because that's what we're expecting. We're preparing our graduates to almost be the academics of the future. So these domains are similar, and that's a good thing, I think, because it makes you join things up, I think. Yeah. So.
All right. I think we will close the answers, the questions and answer for now. And
yes, we can take some more at the end, can't we?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I'll just close mine off then. And I think I'm handing over. Actually, I'll stop sharing, shall I, Mohammed, because it's you next.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Judy. So we can return back to the second activity. And now, mashallah, everyone now knows that we have 4 standard discipline knowledge, teaching and education knowledge about them, and the third one, which is related to the leadership and community engagement. The last but not the least is related to values and attributes and capability. Now the second activity is related to evaluation of these standards based in your point of view and their importance in relation to you as a faculty and the university, and even their importance for being a target for faculty development or training. What we will do, we will go again to Menti, put this code 72912459, and after each slide, we will ask Prof. Judy to give her comment or feedback about your opinion. So please go to Menti, put this code, which will also be displayed on the screen just now. The first one, rearrange the following professional standards from the most important to you as a faculty. Sorry, the code is here, 72912459. Rearrange the following professional standard from the most important to you as a faculty.
This is quite a hard question, isn't it, Mohammed?
Yes. Yes. We need at least to start. We know, mashallah, 180. Okay, alhamdulillah, we start. So the professional knowledge and the skills in education, learning, and teaching is at the top till now.
And then the subject discipline, then the values, then the leadership.
Yes.
I think it's really hard to do this
Yes.
one. I think it depends partly on where you are in your career, but also I think, you know, it depends what you see yourself as. If you see yourself as an educator, then probably you would see that first one, wouldn't you? Whereas if you're a researcher, you might pick the second one because that's about your subject. But we need, I mean, ideally, we should give everybody 4 votes, shouldn't we? But ideally, we should think about them all, aren't they? But in terms of development, you know, it may be that one of our focuses needs to be on the educational development, doesn't it? And everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Any more? We still only 32.
We really appreciate your engagement, please, and the mentee, everyone.
They're probably they're having their dinners or something. That's the hazard of Zoom, isn't it? People log on and then vanish.
Yes.
We could wait for half a minute.
Half a minute.
Because I think these are important questions and should reflect on the ongoing process.
Did you have an idea about what you might have expected from this, Mohammed?
Yes.
Did you expect this answer?
Actually, I expect that the professional value will be much more than this. But again, the skills and the knowledge related to teaching and the learning, I think it is crucial, especially in this era and this time. So yes. I think it is okay.
I think it's okay. Shall we go to the next one?
Okay, sure. Rearrange this professional standard from the most important to the university.
Right, so that first one was about you as a faculty member, as a member of staff, and now this is the wider university, isn't it?
Yes.
What do you think the university values?
Yes. So at this time, you will think about the university and the university need, which is.
That's completely different. That's so funny. Mind you, only 2 people have voted, so it's a bit of a skewed response, isn't it?
And now, mashallah, it is more rapid in response rather the first one. And
yeah, this is because they're imagining themselves as the leader, the president of the universe. This is good fun. It's good fun engaging in Menti, everybody. It's such a good thing to use if you don't use it in your teaching, just to, especially when you show it live. I think it's quite nice. Or when I do a word cloud, I don't show that live. I wait and hide it. We should have done a word cloud.
Unfortunately, we didn't have a word cloud in all activities, but we can do, inshallah, next time.
Yes. So quite a lot of people. So, this is interesting, isn't it? We've flipped it around quite a bit now. And I think what's interesting is when you're an academic, your identity is often as an academic in your subject discipline, isn't it? You see yourself as a sociologist or whatever. Like you're a pharmacist, aren't you, Mohammed?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And I'm a medical education person. So, you know, if people ask what you do, you'll say, oh, I'm a this. You don't say, oh, I've got very deep values or something. But from the university, what the university needs are these people who will actually keep the reputation solid. And, you know, when they're out and about reflecting the university, they have to act with, you know, with integrity and have really good values. So I think this is really interesting. And yes, I suppose the university wants to see people engaging outside, don't they, and leading within. And look, our professional knowledge has dropped to 4th now.
Yes.
But yet, if you didn't have that, your university would be a bit stuck, actually. So they do need it. But that's really interesting, isn't it?
I like this diversity between the first and second slide, Prof. Judy, actually, it shows that, mashallah, we have a mind among us in this webinar. Shows the difference between when you are thinking, as you mentioned, about myself as a professional, or when I'm thinking about the university and university need.
Yes.
Okay, so we can go the third and the last one here, to give each of these standards a mark out of 100, based on your current needs to be developed.
Yeah. So this is where, if you were thinking about applying for some sort of recognition, where do you think you would need some development really there? You know, what development, what do you think you need most to develop this one? Because that's what you meant, isn't it, Mohammed?
Yes.
Mm. I would expect something different here.
Again, the leadership is in the second, but the first it is related to subject and discipline knowledge.
Yes.
Third, in learning and teaching.
So that is quite interesting, isn't it, about that? So that means but I should think you probably, if you were applying, would be able to demonstrate your knowledge of your subject discipline fairly straightforwardly, but it's making sure you're up to date, isn't it? And thinking how you would demonstrate that being up to date, I think is quite hard, you know, so things like conferences. And then of course that comes down to, are people supported to do these self-development activities in their subject area? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Shall we? We've got good numbers now.
Yes,
people have come back from dinner. They heard me talking there. They've left the families.
Yes. Okay. So this was the last slide. It is the mic with you, Prof. Judy, to comment on these activities and to continue your nice presentation.
I think it just indicates, you know, as we said, it indicates what people might need. And I hadn't thought that this would be the top one, actually, the subject discipline. Yeah. I expected perhaps the leadership or the teaching or the values, actually. I didn't expect that. So does anybody want to put in the chat, yes, you know, why they think that's important? The subject discipline knowledge.
Yes.
I'm quite interested to know why, actually.
Okay.
Put it in the chat and I'll start talking again.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Judy. And
thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. That's really
thank
good.
You.
All right, let's carry on with where we are. Okay. So,
if you allow me, Prof. Judy, I just want to give a kind reminder for all audience that we will have, inshallah, a question and answer session after we finish the second part of this workshop. So stay tuned and be with us.
And we might finish a bit earlier if you're very good. So just stay with us.
Yeah, that's as well.
So, what we have to do then, when we're thinking about how this standards framework has to come out with your roles, we have to make sure that it's simple to understand and implement, and give this sequential pathway to improvement and enhancement. It has to, as I said, recognise the variety of teaching, learning and assessment, because it is different in different subject disciplines, and that's expected, and we don't always know how it happens in different subject disciplines. We need to work with stakeholders like yourself, so together we're co-creating something that will work, thinking about the areas of activity and values, help to sort of deliver that dynamic approach, and then provide a credible formal recognition of expertise. So one of the things that's quite interesting is what make the national fellowships that we have in the UK are very portable. So if you go to a new university and get a new job, you can say, oh, I'm a senior fellow or principal fellow of the HA, and everybody knows what that is. So this is within the university that this has got this credible recognition. And I'm just seeing in the chat that Fazia said the knowledge of the subject is the most important to deliver it to students in the right way. Absolutely, your knowledge of subject is crucial, and then you've got to know how to enable students to learn your subject, don't you? I agree. Excellent. So what does all this mean for you and your colleagues? How are we going to make it work? So this is where we'd like some input from you in the next sort of ideas. We think, at least initially, recognition would be voluntary. So people would volunteer to have a go. As I said, the standards would apply to academic faculty only, because I think we need to tweak them a little bit more if we're going to roll them out to, you know, technicians, library staff, etc., support staff, etc., when we could. But I think initially, if we stay with what we've said, very separate from probation, promotion, and recruitment. And that might change over time, depending on how well developed and implemented it is, but initially definitely separate. So, for example, if somebody's probationary period is 6 months, you don't expect them to have achieved the recognition portfolio before they can be released for probation, but they might want to, because as you said, that would help in their appraisal and performance review. So you might want to think about that. But I think over time, let's think about using these as part of your promotion applications. If you've got a senior fellowship or principal fellowship, that's a really good indicator, A, that you've met the criteria and been assessed by your peers as doing so, and also that you've got these broad domains as a rounded academic. We think that if you've got an award in something like learning and teaching, for example, a master's in education or something like that, formally link that to standard 2, because if you've got an award in learning and teaching or education, then you should have achieved those domains, and it would just be a question of looking at the modules that you've done. That could be your evidence for the standard 2. This is a bit of an idea of time frame. So here we are now. This is the beginning of our soft launch. So having an engagement event like this. And then I think, you know, if we're really going to make it happen, we'll have to recruit a small number of faculty at different levels just to test it out. How will that work? They would still get the award, by the way, even if they're piloting it, but that would be their reward. Then we'll refine it, get the documentation very clear, and recruit people to be on our panels, because we'll need people to be on the panels, and they will need training, development, support. That's exactly what I did at the Higher Education Academy, trained a load of people, and then we can launch it perhaps by next April. This is just some ideas of time frame. It might be too soon, it might be not quick enough. I'm not sure, but that's an idea. And then how would the application process work? So usually, and this is taken from the common way of things happening, usually there's an application of 3 parts. Usually you write a 400 to 600 word reflective statement under each domain, setting out how your work and your activities meet the criteria. The second one might be a bit longer because it's a bigger domain. You need to show some evidence of achievement in each of the standards of domain, and then to support statements from senior colleagues or peers endorsing your application, basically saying what this person said in the application is true to the best of my knowledge. Okay, so the application is fairly straightforward. Whether we do an online portfolio type process, or whether it's, you know, people put a Word document and evidence PDFs together, but it will be a portfolio type application, because what you're really doing is putting a portfolio of evidence coupled with this reflection that you meet these. So it will have a portfolio. It will be like what we call a professional portfolio. Each application will be assessed by at least 2 peers, will be trained to assess them. Usually this is exactly what we do in the other recognition processes. If people have met the criteria, they will be awarded the recognition at the levels, the fellow, senior fellow, principal, whatever we call these levels. Sometimes people might apply for senior fellow, but the panel might think they meet the fellow. That's one way of doing it. Or you might need further information, more evidence, or you might need those statements strengthening. And the other thing I think is really important is that we support faculty to put the applications together, because they're not straightforward for people always. And often in the Middle East, there isn't as much reflection on practice, written reflection on practice, that perhaps we do in the West. Okay, because it's quite a Western thing to do this. So I think people will need supporting and actually get people to have a look at their applications before they submit them. So that's often part of the development process itself, and it's not a bad thing. It's just reflective of learning how to do the process, really. So that's really where we are. And I think we're going to go on to our last set of Menti activities now, aren't we, Mohammed? So I'll stop sharing.
Thank you, Prof. Judy. Sure, we will start the last Menti activity. Now it is the time about questions. Actually, all of them will be open questions related to the implementation, which is just mentioned by Prof. Judy. So let us go to this question. Again, we need to go to Menti, put this code 87425697. The questions about implementation and about if you are ready or want to participate in the pilot. The first one, from your opinion, what are the most important evidence related to the first standard? Professional knowledge, skills relating to the subject and discipline. What did you suggest about the evidence that you needed to be collected to prove your qualification for the criteria of this standard?
So we'd just like you to use your imagination. What if we were asking you to apply? What sort of thing would you put? Yeah, okay, perfect. What sort of thing could you provide?
I think, Alhamdulillah, Prof. Judy, your message had been got by everyone, because the start is, I think, in the right way. What else? Publication and professional certification. What else?
What about your skills? I think publication could be that, but how would you, publications, how would you provide your skill? How would you show that you've got the skills? Lots of publications, graduate attributes. This is quite a hard one in a way, and an easy one in another way, isn't it? Because we should all not be teaching unless we know. What about keeping up to date? How would you show that? Because you want to keep up to date, don't you, with the subject as well. So depending on your subject discipline, you're right, there might be different things. Yeah, like the cases. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yep. And of course, then you might have some evidence that actually goes in this standard and another one. So remember, evidence might go in two places. It doesn't have to be separate evidence. Workshops, yeah, research papers, conferences, reading. I don't know how you evidence that you read your journal. Okay. I'm just going to.
Once you, okay, Prof. Judy, I can go to the next.
Yeah, go to the next. Go to the next. People can still add to them, can't they?
Yes.
Yeah, you can still add to them.
Now the second question, from your opinion, what are the most important evidence related to the second standard? Professional knowledge and skill in education, learning, and teaching. here we are about teaching and learning and education, knowledge and skills.
Oh yeah, that's good. So this, one of the things this tells us is that I think we're quite bad at keeping evidence about our performance as teachers. We sort of let it happen and we don't collect that evidence. But this, when you introduce something like this, you start to think, well, how am I going to demonstrate this then? So then it might encourage you to sort of start seeking that feedback from your learners more regularly and routinely, just as part of your teaching practice, not waiting for that end of semester evaluation, because as you said, that can be skewed by the marks that the students get. So, you know, these criteria stimulate us to do best practice in our practice as an academic, actually. Oh yeah, some really nice ones here, actually. You might have participated in committees, designing curricula or reviewing, mightn't you? All those sort of things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just looking for
something like this, using many teaching strategies, student feedback.
Yes.
Attending workshop and webinars, student satisfaction survey workshop to develop teaching skills.
I'm just looking for something. That's it. Just looking for our big documentation. So on the big document that we've got, this is brilliant, and we can add to this. So in the first area for subject discipline, we had got qualifications, conference presentations, peer esteem activity. This is for the subject discipline one, invited researcher or speaker, that sort of thing. What else have we got? Oh, things that your subject discipline, that you're involved in supervision, projects, faculty development, that sort of thing. You know, steering PhD supervision to successful conclusion, committee chairing, national, international. So for subject discipline, there were some of the evidences we've got. Let's have a look. Oh, you've got more than I've got. So we can steal these, can't we, and add them in. Yes, things like designing, you might put session or lesson plans, you might include some course materials or assessments. Yes. You might look at, what else have we got? Yeah, been on curriculum committees or education committees, that sort of thing, providing support for students. Assessments, you might have assessment materials. What else have we got? And examples of acting on learner feedback. Yeah, so I think you brilliant. That's really good. Okay, yes. So we'll keep these. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So the third one is about the evidence related to leadership and the community engagement.
So what sort of evidence could you provide then? I'm thinking now.
Welcome. No.
They are actually thinking. Yes, yes, that would be good. Yes, that would be good evidence, wouldn't it? That, yep, workshops. Yep, communication skills. Yeah. Yeah. Examples, yes, examples of projects you've led or initiatives or training staff. Oh, excellent. They're all coming up.
Inshallah.
Yeah, this is good, isn't it? Yeah.
Inshallah.
Yeah.
And here, the committee are here, Prof. Judy.
Yes.
Leadership training, community engagement, coaching, assessment of staff.
Yes.
Supportive, and even the type of leader, supportive leader.
Yes. And being that supportive leader could actually then go into your a bit for evidence for your values as well, couldn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. And I think if you're thinking about outside the university, then you might be on, you know, agile leadership. Has somebody been on one of my courses? I think they have.
You like it too much.
I do. Did you write that?
Someone knows that you like.
They do.
Teaching out critical thinking and communication. Okay.
Oh yeah, perfect. I mean, these are great. So you see, you even at a lower level, you know, you can lead, set new policies. Yes, exactly.
It is in principle, not a senior fellow.
Yes, yes. Well, you might be on a committee that devises a new policy, mightn't you? And that would be an example, because some people don't engage with. See, that's the difference, isn't it? Some people just don't engage in committee work or all that sort of thing. Yes. But if you do, then that's an example of your being engaged and showing some leadership. Remember, the other side of leadership is being a good follower. So that good followership about being on a committee is all part of engagement, isn't it? That's really good. And you might do projects with your students where they work in communities or industry, and you might have that community engagement through there. So excellent.
I think a lot of evidence. I think we could add even to the evidence.
I think we will, definitely.
Yes, mashallah. Yes.
Thank you, Shukran.
Thank you. Okay. Come to the critical coach. Sorry, still the evidence related to professional values, attributes, and capabilities.
So this is some of the ideas you've already had could go in here, I think, as well. Yes.
Yes, sure.
Yes. Yeah. Understanding what they are is the first thing, isn't it? Yeah, and teamwork. Yeah.
Yes, teamwork. Yeah. Good.
So that teamwork is part of collaboration, collegiality, all these things that the university is promoting, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Volunteering. Good. So some of the things we've had before can come into this. So when you're thinking as a rounded academic, you might do something, and actually it might tick a box in all of the domains. So you might, you know, you might be, I don't know, your students might be doing projects on community education or community work, and that would fit into your subject discipline because you're showing them how to enhance their subject. It would be education, it would be the values as well. So, and it could be research because you might write it up. Oh, excellent.
And as you mentioned, there is an overlap between this standard and the other standard in relation to evidence. And this is here in the contribution of our colleagues.
Yes, and it's just angling it a slightly different way. So when you write your reflection, you're reflecting on how your values underpin your practice. But when you were writing about, so the value of collaboration and collegiality, for example, you're looking at it that way. Whereas when you're looking at one of the other standards, you're applying it in a slightly different way. So you're saying this is how you encourage your students to engage in collaboration or your subject discipline. So it's often it's excellent. This is great. Yeah. So I've got examples of engagement in quality improvement, reflective practice innovation, feedback from colleagues or students. That might be an appraisal or peer review, award letters or like that, endorsements, mentoring or supervision activities. So you're showing that you're supporting the next generation. Examples of creativity. Organizational development, and then I suppose the senior academic cross-disciplinary department organizational activities like this is a very good example of a cross-university activity. And then things like promoting diverse and inclusive environment. You might be involved in a policy or a strategy, I don't know, an anti-bullying strategy or cyberbullying or whatever it is, you know, that you've actually developed that or you engage with that. Examples of your continuing professional development, feedback, committee membership again, project management we've had, haven't we? And then for the senior person, they need to almost show that this is quite long-standing, that this isn't just a one-off, you know, written this for the application, but actually over the X number of years, you've consistently done this and demonstrated it. So for us, when we have to do the principal fellow for the HEA, that really is about over time. You've consistently contributed and to your, you know, community or whatever. Remember, in community, it might also be your professional community. So for us in health professions, we have very active health professions education communities. And so I contribute a lot to that, my community. I'm on, you know, executive of committees and And that would be something that's partly my values, but it's also my leadership role as well in community engagement. So community might be the geographical community, or it might be the community of practice. So we can interpret that in two different ways. Excellent.
Judy,
Yes.
would the patient satisfaction and, for example, evaluation for the doctor in medical school, would that consider as an evidence related to that standard as well?
I think so, but it wouldn't have to be the only one, because I think that relates to their clinical practice rather than their academic practice. So it could be an indicator that they're a good clinician, but they'd have to then say, well, what does that mean? How do they bring that into their academic life? So if you're a doctor, you know, how do you relate that? How do you present that in your academic life? So it's almost thinking about the context of the academic world. But yes, if you are a practitioner in any way, you might be a lawyer or an accountant, and you might bring those values in. So you might teach your students what it means to be a professional doctor, lawyer, accountant, teacher, whatever that is, by your role modeling, things like that. You might. So in law teaching, for example, they'll have what they call the moot courts, where they'll have a mock court, and the students learn how to behave in a courtroom. And so an example of that would be, this is how we work in practice. And actually, I'd bring this into the learning experience to show the students how they need to behave and as a professional lawyer. Yeah. And then you might have a debate about it afterwards. So things like that, you need to bring your practice into your academic practice. So that would be part of the reflection, wouldn't it? Sorry, Mohammed.
Yes, sorry. And you have here one more good example like this defining a set of acceptable and workplace principles, which could be like a document, and they behave according to it. So is here some documentation like a word like this. And so we have, mashallah, more than another example for evidence. Yeah.
I think so. And I think it might be just your own standards of life, or it may be that you are a professional and you have a code of standards. Like, you know, doctors have a code of ethics, don't they? And how do you bring that into your everyday life as an academic and behave in that way? Excellent.
Okay. We can go. Okay,
you can go to the last slide, actually.
Yes.
Yes, you're on the challenges now, aren't we?
Okay. Yes. Yes. Challenge and how to facilitate this challenge. From your point of view, what are the most important challenges to implement the professional standard framework? About challenges. I leave to you to comment, Prof. Judy, about this challenge.
I will when they've put a few more.
Yes, I know. You need more and more.
Yes, there will be lots of challenges. I agree.
Yes.
I'm just looking at this ISO standard. Okay, let's have a look. Can you go to the top again?
Yes, sure,
let's have a look.
Sure.
Yes, we know, time. I would obviously, yeah, I'm not being facetious. Your time, yes, time is of the essence. And so we have to acknowledge that this will take some time. And I think that's about providing workshops where people can help develop their reflections and do this and making it as easy as possible, as simple as possible to put the portfolio together has to be right. Gathering the evidence, absolutely. You've got to, I mean, this is the soft launch. So now hopefully people might be thinking, do you know, if I was doing this, what might I gather? And we can provide examples of that and encourage people to do that. Time, healthy working environment. I can't do much about that, sorry. It's important, isn't it? Yeah, you need to have that. So we need to, yes, the organisation needs to support you. Lacking educational skills, so that's partly being mentored, having those mentors, but it's also some training and development for you. Time and money. I don't know about the money bit. Numbers of students, yeah, this comes back to your time again. Yeah, what value does it have or add? It has to have some purpose, otherwise nobody will be motivated to do it. And that's for us to think from a university perspective. So what then? So people do this, what does that? Procrastination, yep. Staff rejection, yes, lack of support is the same thing, isn't it? Yes, you're right, people might not want to do it. Oh no, you'll become evil in the eyes of the students. I don't know. Miscommunication. Can you just go up a minute, Mohammed? There was one at the top that I missed. But
okay, is it okay?
Go. Can you scroll so I can see the top again? There was something.
Okay, sorry, we are here.
No, go up a bit more. Go right up to the top.
Is
that the top?
The top. What? Which one?
Right to the top. The beginning.
This is the top.
That was it. Consistency in the measurement of the standards. Absolutely. That will come down to training of assessors and making sure that we monitor and evaluate the quality. The way we did it when we rolled out the national standards framework is that we got panels together and we worked in bigger panels to try and look at them, and then we brought them back, and over time the panels shrank down. So we tended to get a big pile of them. We used to do it for, well, it was a national thing, so we came together for a day and we would probably do about 50 to 60 applications in that day, but we won't do it quite like that. But we will have to get consistency, you're right. Sorry, can you scroll down now, Mohammed?
Sure. I think we were here.
We're a bit further. We had the evil eye. Wait a minute, go down a bit.
Okay.
I think you have to be proud. The other thing is about being proud of yourself, isn't it, as an academic and doing these things. And if this is important, I do think if it starts to contribute to promotion, and it can be one of the things you take to appraisal and promotion, I think that can help, definitely. That takes a bit of time to bed down. But, you know, if you're applying for promotion, this would be a great piece of thing to bring, wouldn't it? Yeah, miscommunication. Yeah, we have to be careful to get those communications transparent and clear across. Okay, keep going. Yeah, consistency. Yes, I think a lot of people need more training, and I do appreciate, I am an academic myself, I do appreciate the academic load, and the procrastination is so typical, isn't it? You know, it's that everybody puts it off. I mean, one of the ways that we could look at things is starting to think about appraisal and performance review in the university, just to start to ask a few of these questions, maybe not all of them, the full thing, but start to get these criteria almost, you know, becoming part of the currency. Might be what, that's just an idea off the top of my head. Okay, more. Yeah, we do. We need, yeah, it shouldn't be competitive. I agree with you. Yeah, we haven't shared with you all the documentation yet. We've done a lot of it, but we haven't, this is the soft launch to gather more ideas and things about the challenges. Okay, I absolutely appreciate all the challenges you've put, and I don't think any of them were unsurprising to me. These are always the challenges we have when we're introducing something like this. So we've got to make it attractive and meaningful, and we've got to support people and work with their time so that we actually can try to make it something that, you know, is something that is valuable to do. And if we can't do that, then I agree with you, it will be difficult. Yeah.
Okay. So now how you can help to overcome or facilitate the implementation of the professional standard framework? You, mashallah, mentioned or a challenge. Now about the facilitation and how to overcome this challenge.
We're going from the negative to the positive now, aren't we? Our glass is now not going to be half empty, it's going to be half full. So how can we help make this happen? So give us some ideas. What are your ideas? To refresh.
Yes, okay, sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oh.
Good.
Mm. Yeah, I think it has to be locked into the university, doesn't it? Yeah, training, education, yeah, formative assessment. One of the things we've done before is actually have workshops to help people, you know, put their portfolios together. You know, looking at pieces of writing, thinking about evidence, making it easy to do that. A supportive boss, always handy. You know. Cooperation, yeah. For those of you who are in leadership positions, you will have to be those supportive bosses. That might give you a challenge of its own, but actually it's then how do you support people to do this? You know, so there are challenges there. Yeah, getting that willingness, making it meaningful, isn't it? Mentors for new teaching faculty, that was so important, I think. And actually, one of the things that often, as I said to you before, one of the things that often people started with was making it something that was about new lecturers. So new lecturers within their first year might do this, and if you start with them, you know. I think what I find is it tends to be mid-level career people that are least sort of allured to this. I think if you're new, you're enthusiastic, and if you're a leader or a manager or more senior, you want to show people that you've done this thing. But I think in the middle, it can feel a bit more of an ordeal, and of course that's the bulk of the people. So I think that's where we probably need to think about support at the different levels. Yep. Adaptability. Yeah, and I think it has to have good benchmarks, which we've designed it and benchmarked against best practice, but it also has to be flexible to the context, not just the subject discipline or department, but also the Saudi context as well. Yep.
This is good, Prof. Judy. Change your thinking toward it to be needed, not requirement.
Yes, exactly. Thinking that it will help improve you, and it also might give you there has to be an intrinsic motivation inside yourself that this is a good thing, but there has to be some sort of extrinsic motivation, which is the value that the organization places on it. So there has to be a value that the organization recognizes as well as you yourself. Otherwise, you know, why would you do it? Why would you do it? All you'll get is the people who are very sort of keen and enthusiastic to do it, and you won't actually get the bulk, you know, you won't get that tipping point where the bulk of people's all of the requirements. I think that's gone a bit waiving all of the requirements. Oh, well, that's not, well, how do we do that? So building the common framework of standards. So one of the things, and this is part of this, so there was a smaller group of people in the university and myself and the other academic developed this from the literature, And then this is the work that we're doing now, is bringing all these ideas to improve the common framework and see how that works, isn't it, Mohammed? That's the idea.
Yes.
So this is very evidence-based. The framework is super evidence-based on best practice around the world, which we thought was a good starting point. That's what we try to do with our evidence, isn't it? And then I think what the democratic bit is actually having really good feedback at the piloting time, really saying, does it work? Is this too hard? What have we got too many domains or criteria? That's how I would like to see the framework being developed at the detail level and the implementation level. Because I think we've done a really good piece of work has been done looking across the world at all the different things. Then we've got that document if people are interested. I'm sure there's no problem people seeing the evidence behind it. And when we put the documentation together, we'll put that part of it, because we did a big piece of work on that. Okay, this is helpful, isn't it? Yes. So you're going to ask your clincher question now.
Yes.
I think, in my opinion, Prof. Judy, it's very important that we have to believe in it and how important this standard is. Then we can encourage people to join us.
Yes.
Once we believe, I think it's contagious. Once you got it, you can. Yes, you can spread it all around. Yes.
It's got to be important, hasn't it, to people? It's got to go, this is what we want. This is what we want to be proud of working at KAU, that we've got this and we are seen as this. Has to be really vital. So let's just look at the faculty. We've got this question in a very short final one, haven't we? And then we'll do the final Q&A. Because we did promise them we'd finish early. We'll have to really.
We have one more after this also, but it is
there is.
Very yes. Here, what are the kinds of faculty development which will help you to develop the requirement of the professional standard? I think this will reflect what is mentioned in the previous
I think so. Yes. But they've had a bit more time to think now, haven't they, as well? So. Yes, I think it's almost for individuals thinking, where might the gaps be, isn't it? Where's my gap here?
Yes. So it should be.
Oh, is that mediation or meditation? Yes, I think that will. It's this funny person. Yeah. I think also some workshops on the standards themselves, isn't it? Yeah, mentorship. I'm liking meditation and mindfulness though, aren't you? Do you like a bit of mindfulness? Yeah, I think learning how to put the portfolio together is a skill in itself, actually. And we noticed, I think that's probably what people mean. I think we noticed when we were rolling out all our standards frameworks, the 3 I've been involved with, it's been that. It's been about, how do you do that? So research and teaching balance, yes, you will have differences in some departments. For example, say nursing has always very traditionally been more teaching focused, whereas other departments are more research focused. So, workshops, conferences. Well, now that we've got hybrid conferences, we don't have to leave our countries, do we? We can just sit here. Yep. I do think you're right, whoever wrote that, about several workshops. This is the very first one. This is the beginning, isn't it, really, of thinking about what this could be. So some really good ideas here. Yeah. I think what I would love is some champions. If you could have a champion in every department, that would be so brilliant, wouldn't it? That we could actually work with the champions too.
And this will be our last question.
Shall we ask that? Who would like to be a champion?
Yes.
Did you like the way I just sowed the seed of that? Yeah.
Yes, sure. Sorry. Oh, mashallah.
They've all gone to dinner again, look, have you noticed?
Yes. Or go to sleep.
Yeah, good.
Good, mashallah.
I think if people are part of the pilot, we have to make sure they do have the time and support to do that,
Yes.
don't we, Mohammed?
Yes.
I think that has to be a given, because otherwise, if we can't pilot it, we'll never get it rolled out, will we? So, you know, that...
I think we collect all needed information from, mashallah, our colleague today about the challenges, how to overcome.
Yes.
And,
yes.
and after all this, mashallah, ready to engage and to ready to participate. So
Yes.
they do everything, mashallah, today.
Yeah, no, it's been really helpful.
Yes.
I do thank you so much, everybody.
Yes. Yes, we have a lot.
Oh, good. I wonder if you've got somebody in every department. That would be the best, wouldn't it?
Yes, mashallah.
So while you're offering yourselves, I don't know who the person who's saying, we don't know, it's anonymous, isn't it, Mohammed? So we don't know who the no is, but that's fair enough.
Good.
Actually, you might just think this isn't for you, and I think that's fine.
Yes.
You know, I think so. It's not for everybody. I procrastinated for about 5 years before I put my application for principal fellow in, because it seemed too hard a job. You know, so I can absolutely see that it just gets pushed down the list if it's not supported, and that's, you know, that's the risk. So let's just leave that ticking away. I think what we wanted to do really now was just to close off a little bit and just answer any outstanding questions.
Yes.
That people have, and there's a couple in the Q&A. So there's something about being a role model. How can we convince the students to stick to the uni dress code? I am not sure what the answer is to that, about being a role model, but I'm not sure what the answer is to that one, Maha, to be fair. And Dr. Ayman says, what's the relationship between this standard and ISO 21001? When I looked up 21001, I got something about aircraft safety, so I'm not sure I'm looking at the right ISO standard. But there are some relating to accreditation, and there are some related to professional development. I do know that. These standards are very much around the university professional standards framework for university teachers, which I don't think is in the ISO there, but I think that might be the quality assurance of education one. Dr. Ayman, I don't know if you wanted to elaborate on that in the chat.
All right, we have another questions from a leader point of view. Can you give some ideas to leaders other than training on how to implement the framework successfully and how to measure its effectiveness? Is there a well-known method to evaluate, such as verified survey questions, for example?
Oh, I think from a leadership perspective, there has to be something about leading by example. Actually, that's really important. And training and support go hand in hand, don't they? So, you know, support. So leading by example, leading that this is a good thing, and supporting your staff to do it is one side of it. The measuring its effectiveness, well, the way that the UK PSF is measured partly is quantitatively, how many people, you know, our fellows, members, whatever, and every university is measured as part of its accreditation on how many what percentage of its faculty are fellows, members, etc. of the Higher Education Academy. That's a national thing. So obviously we could look at quantitatively, we could look at how many people have got this. What I would do also is I would do a more longitudinal impact evaluation to actually see, so what does this mean? Does this help people? You know, you could have a survey or interviews or whatever each year. How did this help you in your, how did this help you? Did this help you in your promotion? Did this help you improve your practice? So you're gradually building up this body of evidence about the impact. But that we start it at the beginning, and that would be something that we build up year on year. So I do a long-term evaluation of a leadership fellowship for clinical, for doctors in training and other health professionals that's been going for 13 years in the UK. And I've done the impact evaluations for those, and we're starting to see the impact of the fellowship on their career development now and the things they get involved with. So I think that would be, that's the sort of, you can't do a quick snapshot survey only on numbers really, but if you look longitudinally, you know, if we looked in 5 years' time, what impact has this had? Then actually you could actually measure that and show its impact. So they're the sort of evaluations I think you would do with this sort of a scheme. Because it's a culture change as much as anything, you know, and culture change is really hard to measure. You know, you could also look at once, you know, if this really took off and it made KAU like amazing, then do you attract more applicants to posts, academic posts? Do people say it's a good place to work? You know, all those sort of things. So peer review, I agree. Yes, it can be introduced in an acceptable way, very much around constructive evaluation. It has to be developmental and it hasn't to be punitive. And I think if you introduce peer review where it has some sort of punitive aspect to it or a sanction aspect, then nobody can perform well if they're being observed by somebody, if they think that if they make a mistake, they'll be slammed. So I think it all has to be very constructive. And in fact, putting these portfolios together has to be developmental as well. Do you remember when I said, you know, if somebody's application isn't right, then we give them feedback so they can make it right. You know, so it isn't a you've got one shot and if you miss it, you've gone. It's very much about no, you haven't got that quite right. It may be that they haven't got the evidence, in which case they might have to go back and collect more evidence or wait a year or whatever. But everything you do about evaluation of your colleagues, of your peers, has to be very developmental and sensitive. Otherwise, people won't engage in it because it doesn't feel psychologically safe. So, you know, I don't mind being watched teaching now because I'm, you know, of an age that I don't mind, but it could be quite off-putting, I think. So you do have to be really careful about that. But, you know, and also there's always something you can improve. Always something that you can improve about your teaching. So if you're being observed, then having to think about what could be improved is really helpful. And then you try and improve it. And that's part of your development. And that's part of those values and your practice as an educator, that, you know, you're always improving. Every single thing I do, I always think about how could we have done it better. Mohammed and I will have a conversation, and Arnie and Dr. Waza after, and we'll go, okay, how was that? Could we have done better? Because that's what you do in your teaching practice, isn't it? It doesn't mean things are wrong. It just means, you know, you might do things differently. So, yeah, it is sensitive. I agree. Sorry, I'm waffling on.
All right. Is there any more questions? We still have 5 minutes left.
Yeah, but we promised we'd finish early, remember?
Yeah, but it's very enjoyable.
It
really.
Is. Well, I think this comment from Dr. Samaya is really interesting about examples of best practices. I think what we do is put together some sort of example portfolios, and that's what we did before when we introduced them. We said, look, this is an example. So that's why the pilot's really important. So we can pilot to develop some example portfolios that then we can show what a good portfolio would look like, or hopefully not a weak one, but we can make a weak one up. So we show that. So they'll be the standardization of the portfolios. There's always a professional judgment, and that's why you have a panel and not single people. So whenever we assess any peer things, we always do it in pairs or threes, or you have a moderator or whatever, so that you're starting to get consistency across. So the training of the assessors is really important. Yeah, so I think that's part of the piloting and involving people at the get-go.
All right, I think that's it. We don't have any more questions.
No.
Thank you very much, Prof. Judy, for your valuable, informative presentations. We really enjoy it, and the time passed very fast. We didn't feel
it
the time.
It did actually, didn't it?
It is. And thank you very much, Prof. Hassanein, for your managing the Menti activities tonight and make it more interactive. We are really very very pleased that you gave us the chance and the opportunity for soft launching for the professional 4 standards for KAU through this workshop under the umbrella of the Forum of the Heads and Supervisors of the academic departments. Really appreciate your participation today with us, and inshallah we'll see you in more future workshops, inshallah, through this semester, bi'idhnillah. And thank you, audience, for your attendance and interactions. And we will see you soon, inshallah, in more activities and workshops through the Forum of the Heads and Supervisors. Thank you very much, and have a nice evening.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Should we say good night?
Thank you.
I'm just putting a comment to Dr. Ayman about the ISO standards. I'll have a look at that. Thank you very much for that.
Yep.
Great. Okay. Thank you
very much.
Okay. Shukran.
Shukran, Prof. Thank you. Thank you all.
Okay. Thank you. I'll see you another time.
Soon.
Yes, soon, inshallah. في أمان الله.
سلامة الله. ألف سلامة. ألف شكر. شكرا جزيلا. السلام عليكم.